Hey guys, my name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming a book talk for The Humans by Matt Haig. This is one of my new favorite books of all time. This is a book that I kind of just picked up on a whim. I saw it over on Emily Fox's channel. I'll put a link in the description for her channel, but I saw it mentioned in her wrap-up last month, and she just seemed to really enjoy it, and she said it was like a new favorite of hers, and the premise sounded really interesting to me, so I just ordered it off of Book Depository, and it took fucking weeks to get here, because you know how Book Depository is, and it finally got here, and I just sat in bed all day yesterday and read the entire thing, and it was an easy 5 out of 5, one of my new favorite books of all time. It was so surprising and so good. So the beginning of this is going to be spoiler free, and then I'm going to jump into some spoilers towards the end of this video, but I'll warn you beforehand. The premise of this book, it's basically about this alien comes down to Earth and he gets put in the body of this 43-year-old man, and why this is because he just solved this huge mathematical problem and it's gonna change the world as we know it. And so the aliens have been watching us and they're like, oh my god, human beings aren't ready for that, so we need to go down there and like intervene. And so they send this alien down in the form of Andrew Martin. His mission is basically just to delete any existence that the proof was ever solved and to kill anybody who knows anything about it. This book is fucking hilarious because like the entire book is told from the alien's perspective, and he's kind of talking to like his audience that he's talking to is his other like alien friends, and like the way that he sees humans is just like so entertaining, and he kind of has this like pessimistic negative view on humans. It was kind of like really refreshing to see such an honest, like a different point of view about humanity. Like the very first line of this book is, I know that some of you reading this are convinced humans are a myth, but I am here to state that they do actually exist. A human is a real life form of mid-range intelligence living a largely diluted existence on a small waterlogged planet in a very lonely corner of the universe. Basically like shits all over humanity and says like, oh my god, they're hideous to look at. They have these huge things in the middle of their faces that they call noses. They have these things called eyebrows that are so pointless, and just all this hilarious content. Like it's probably one of the funniest books I've read in a really long time. And then at the end of the first little chapter there, and it says, and what if there actually is a meaning to human life, and what if, humor me, life on Earth is something not just to fear and ridicule but also to cherish. It ends up becoming this like beautiful coming of age story for this alien to discover humanity and what makes humanity so great. And dare I say, but this book did remind me a lot of We Are the Ants. It's a coming of age story that involves aliens somehow, and it starts off with this very like depressing, pessimistic, cynical view of humanity and the world, and then it's this beautiful character arc for both of these characters, like learning what makes human life so meaningful and what makes the world such a beautiful place. Literally has the same message when you think about it. Like this is just the adult version that has a lot more comedy, and this is the young adult LGBT version, but I mean both of these books do have similar themes and similar messages, and they both involve aliens. It's a weird coincidence, okay? And if you didn't know, We Are the Ants is my favorite book of all time, so clearly this was amazing for me. He's so confused how humans are able to live their day-to-day life knowing that they're gonna die within like 100 years, and he's like, that because you know his species is immortal, like they don't die, and the land that he's from, galaxies away from where we are, is like so peaceful, and they don't have any family and they don't have any hatred between them, and they're just so peaceful and happy. He's so confused how humans are so comfortable living in a world where there's like war and disease, and they know they're gonna die like within 100 years, and he can't fathom the fact that like we're just living our everyday lives and trying to make meaning out of nothing, you know, because he's like, what's the point? We're not gonna be here in like more than 100 years, which is like the same exact thing in We Are the Ants, you know? It's like, what is the purpose of this all, you know, like that type of thing. Like a quote that's an example of this is when he says, a human life is on average 80 Earth years, or around 30,000 Earth days, which means they are born, they make some friends, eat a few meals, they get married or they don't get married, have a child or two or not, drink a few thousand glasses of wine, have sexual intercourse a few times, discover a lump somewhere, feel a bit of regret, wonder where all the time went, know they should have done it differently, realize they would have done it all the same, and then die into the great black nothing, out of space, out of time, the most trivial of trivial zeros, and that's it. The full caboodle, all confined to the same mediocre planet. And it's like, yeah, it's depressing to think about, but at the same time, like, there is some truth in that quote. I mean, I guess the reason why I love this book so much is just because I love books that start off with a really like cynical, pessimistic view of humanity in the world, because like I'll be the first to admit that I definitely have a pessimistic view when it comes to humanity and the future, and helps me relate to the story right away when I see a point of view so similar to my own. And then to see that point of view change throughout the book, it almost just gives me a new perspective too, and it makes me feel more optimistic and hopeful. And it's really powerful when a book can do that, you know? Not to mention it's just really well written, and it's hilarious to see the point of view of an alien looking at humanity, because you realize how like strange we are, you know? I think that's all for the non-spoilery section. If this sounds at all interesting to you, then I highly recommend picking this book up. It's just so wonderful and surprising and beautifully written and really hilarious, and just one of the best books I've read this year and ever. Give it a shot. And if you're looking for this cover, this one is the UK cover. The US edition I didn't really like. It looked kind of ugly, so I'll put a link in the description if you want to get this cover. Yeah, so I'm gonna jump into some spoilery content now, so if you haven't read it, please go and read it and then come back and we can discuss it. Let's talk about this, bitch. I don't know if you can even see that, but like I dog-eared so many pages and I just like highlighted like a mad person. It was crazy. And speaking of mad people, I really loved that first quote. It was on page 32 when he talked about mad people and how you're only considered mad in like certain situations. Like you have to understand your situation to fit in on Earth, or else people think you're insane or mad. Humans, as a rule, don't like mad people unless they're good at painting, and only once they're dead. But the definition of mad on Earth seems to be very unclear and inconsistent. What is perfectly sane in one era turns out to be insane in another. The earliest humans walked around naked with no problem. Certain humans, in humid rainforests mainly, still do so. So we must conclude that madness is sometimes a question of time and sometimes of postcode. Basically, the key rule is if you want to appear sane on Earth, you have to be in the right place, wearing the right clothes, saying the right things, and only stepping on the right kind of grass. And I love that because like he doesn't understand what the big deal is when he's like walking around naked in public, because he's an alien and he's like, wait, don't we all have these human bodies? Like, don't you know what a human body looks like? Like, what's the big deal? And it kind of just makes you like question why we're so like anal about those kind of things in society, you know? And I love that one conversation when his alien people are talking to him, because he's like constantly in communication with them, and they're like, the humans are an arrogant species defined by violence and greed. They have taken their home planet, the only one they currently have access to, and placed it on the road to destruction. They have created a world of divisions and categories and have continually failed to see the similarities between themselves. They have developed technology at a rate too fast for human psychology to keep up with, and yet they still pursue advancement for advancement's sake, and for the pursuit of the money and the fame they all crave so much. You must never fall into the human's trap. It's kind of true. And I love the way that he was sitting there watching the news, and he was expecting to hear something about like the mathematical breakthroughs and whatever, and he's like, all the news is about is war and money, and he's like, and the news is only stuff that directly affects humans, and he's like, the more local, the more you care about it. Like, we don't care about stuff that's happening on the other side of the world. Like, we only care about it if it's happening in our front yard, you know? I love though how in this story, like little by little, the humans just start growing on him, and it's almost like he's not even aware of it, you know? Because I thought it was so funny, because like the first time he sees Andrew Martin's wife in bed with him, he's like, oh my god, she's hideous, you know? Like, and he's like so freaked out by her. I love that part when he says, human life, I realized, got progressively worse as you got older by the sound of things. You arrived with baby feet and hands and infinite happiness, and then the happiness slowly evaporated as your feet and hands grew bigger. And then from the teenage years onwards, happiness was something you could lose your grip of, and once it started to slip, it gained mass. It was as if the knowledge that it could slip was the thing that made it more difficult to hold, no matter how big your feet and hands were. Why was this depressing? Why did I care when it was not my job to do so? He started to care about humans even though he didn't want to, and he didn't know why he did. I love books that mention the idea that like happiness is something we lose as we age, because I do think that it's true. Like, you're never happier than when you're a kid. You just aren't. I love when he starts defending the humans to his own alien people when they're like, what are you saying? And he's like, what I am saying is that it takes time to understand humans because they don't understand themselves. They've been wearing clothes for so long, metaphorical clothes. That is what I am talking about. That was the price of human civilization. To create it, they had to close the door on their true selves. And this is why they invented art, books, music, films, plays, painting, and sculptures. They invented them as a bridge back to themselves, back to who they are. As he starts studying humanity and getting closer to these humans, he starts understanding us better than we even understand ourselves, you know? Freaking intense when Gulliver, like the son, tried to kill himself, and he was just like, he was so tired of being, you know, because like in real life, Andrew Martin had this like really messy relationship with his son because he constantly made him feel like he wasn't good enough, because Andrew Martin is this like mathematical genius, and so he put a lot of pressure on his son in the real world to like do something with his life and be good at math and whatever, and he wasn't the best father to him, you know? So like now that the alien is in Andrew Martin's form, he's like trying to connect with the kid more and understand him, and then one day the kid tries to kill himself. He like takes a bunch of pills and he's gonna go jump off the roof. The alien literally uses his like regeneration powers to like save the boy, and it was like the sweetest thing ever. Like he brought him back to life basically after he jumped off the fucking roof and he wanted to die. It was just so wonderful, like to see him actually save another person after he, like in the beginning of the book, he like killed that guy so effortlessly and he like didn't care because he thought humanity was like pointless, you know, but like now it's like he actually cares enough to save another person. So I really love this one quote, this chapter that is titled "Heaven is a Place Where Nothing Ever Happens." It's on page 174, and he's just talking about how everybody wants to spend eternity in heaven. Like anybody that's religious, you know, wants to spend eternity in heaven because it's like so peaceful and nothing bad ever happens there. And then he just starts to question, you know, because like his land where he comes from is so similar to heaven, and so he feels like he's been living in this like heaven for his entire existence, and so now that he's come to Earth, he realizes he's finally living like for real on Earth. And he's saying, a human who arrived here, like where he's from, gazing at our violent landscapes, might have believed they had entered heaven. But what happened in heaven? What did you do there? After a while, didn't you crave flaws, love and lust, and misunderstandings, and maybe even a little violence just to liven things up? Didn't light need shade? Didn't it? And I kind of like love that, because it's like, yeah, like we do crave like lust and kind of like things that are wrong or sinful just to like make us feel like we're living our lives, you know? Like heaven would be so boring, you know what I mean? Like it's just such a good point. Also, I love that part when he tells the aliens that he wants to stay in his human form, like he doesn't want to go back and be an alien anymore. Page 195, when he's like telling them like, I want to stay here, I want to be a human, I don't want to go back to my planet, like just keep me in this life form. And they're like, do you realize what this means? And they're like, you will be trapped in a body that cannot regenerate itself, you will grow old, you will get diseases, you will feel pain, and forever know, unlike the rest of the ignorant species you want to belong to, that you have chosen that suffering, you have brought it on yourself. And then he's like, yes, I know that. And he's like, alright, you've been given the ultimate punishment. You are now human. And I was just dying, because it's like, yeah, like someone might be considered crazy if they would rather be in this body that will eventually grow old and die when they could be living immortally forever in this heaven that's just so boring and nothing ever happens there. But he would rather have an eventful short life on Earth, and I just thought that was so beautiful. I loved seeing him like slowly start to fall in love with his wife Isabel, you know? Like you can definitely tell that in the real world before this happened. Like they were definitely on the brink of divorce and they weren't getting along and they just didn't love each other the same way anymore, you know? But then he's slowly starting to like fall for her, and I just think it's so cute and so beautiful. I really love this quote that he says about Isabel when he says, love is scary because it pulls you in with an intense force, a supermassive black hole, which looks like nothing from the outside, but from the inside it challenges every reasonable thing you know. You lose yourself, like I lost myself in the warmest of annihilations. Another quote that kind of like changed my own perspective, you know, when he gives this really long explanation about how humans shouldn't be able to exist and how like impossible it is, because he's like saying that your parents should have never met. There's like 7 billion people on this planet, and the chances of your parents meeting were like 1 to nothing. Her mother would have had about 100,000 eggs, and her father would have had 5 trillion sperm during the length of that time. There were 150,000 generations of people before her, and he's like, so therefore, mathematically rounding things up, there was no chance at all that Isabel Martin could have existed. A 0 and 10 to the power of forever chance, and yet here she was, right in front of me, and I was quite taken back by it all. I really was. Suddenly it made me realize realize why religion was such a big thing around here, because yes, sure, God could not exist, but then neither could humans. So if they believed in themselves, the logic must go, why not believe in something that was only a fraction more unlikely? And that kind of like made me stop and think, you know, because like I'm not a religious person myself. I don't believe in a God. It kind of like made me stop and think, like it makes, like that right there made me realize, like, yeah, that makes sense why people would believe in a God, because like just the fact that humans exist seems so unlikely, so why not believe in something that's just slightly a little bit more unlikely, you know? It just, I don't know, it opened my eyes and it definitely gave me like a new perspective on things. And I love the way that he realizes like this kind of love that humans can experience is only so powerful because we're gonna die one day and because it's going to end. I love the way he talks about how he sees the love coming back inside of her. Like you can tell that she hasn't had feelings for him in a really long time, and then slowly she's like starting to fall for him again too. And he says, I felt an incredible excitement being able to witness the love re-emerge inside her, because it was a total prime of life love, the kind that could only be possible in someone who is going to die at some point in the future, and also someone who had lived enough to know that loving and being loved back was a hard thing to get right, but when you managed it, you could see forever. It was just beautiful because he was so like set in his ways before this, you know, and he was so cynical and just like didn't think that love was like a real thing, you know, and it's like love is something that takes time, you know, and he's spent so much time with her and now he's just grown to like love the little things, and it's so fucking sweet. Okay, that part towards the end had me fucking shooketh when the aliens, like his crew, sent another Andrew Martin. Like after they had that fight, like he was such an idiot. Like the main character alien dude, he slept with another girl and he didn't know that that's like not allowed in a marriage. I mean, it's just a shame, you know, because he didn't know. Can't sleep with other people. He just thought, he was like, no, it's just pleasure, like I don't love her, like it's just like eating my peanut butter sandwich. Like he didn't understand that that's like not okay. So of course Isabel got so mad and she kicked him out, and now they're not together anymore. And of course in that scene he tries to tell her like, no, you don't understand, I'm an alien, I'm not who I say I am, and she's like, what the fuck, and she's like not believing him. But since he tried to tell her what he really is, now his alien crew sent down another Andrew Martin. That's another alien in the body of like her husband. Like I was getting some serious like dark matter vibes in that moment. I was like, holy shit, what is happening? And so then the new Andrew Martin is on a mission to kill the wife and the son because he just basically tried to give his identity, like who he really is and what they're really doing to her. And so now they have to like kill her. He, like when our main character alien was fighting with the other alien about why humanity is worth saving and why they're so great, it kind of reminded me of like the last scene of Wonder Woman when he's like, no, humans are stupid, and she's like, no, there's so much more. That was like so like this scene, you know? And I love when the other alien, he's like I have lived with a human for only a few days, but I have seen the violence and hypocrisy that runs through this species. They can drive a car 30 miles every day and feel good about themselves for recycling a couple of empty jars. They can talk about peace being a good thing yet glorify war. They can despise the man who kills his wife in rage but worship the indifferent soldier who drops a bomb killing 100 children. And then he's like, yes, I know it's bad logic, I agree with you, but you know, and then he's like, no, and he's like, they believe God is always on their side, even if their side is at odds with the rest of their species. They have no way of coming to terms with what are biologically the two most important events that happen to them, procreation and death. They pretend to know that money can't buy them happiness, yet they would choose money every time. They celebrate mediocrity at every available opportunity and love to see others' misfortune. They have lived on this planet for over 100,000 generations, and yet they still have no idea who they really are or how they should live. Alien just refuses to understand anything about humanity, like the way he did when he first came to the planet. And that's why it's so beautiful to see this like evolution. Like he's completely humanized now, and according to the other aliens he's like sabotaged, like they've manipulated him, they've brainwashed him, you know, but like now he's totally human. And I love that scene at the end that was so intense when the kid Gulliver comes home and he's like, he sees two people that are like his dad and he's like, what, like what's going on? And then they both like tell him like, oh, your dad was actually abducted by aliens and now we're two aliens that are in the form of your dad and whatever, and he has to try to figure out like which one of them is the dad that he's been spending all of his time with lately and which one he actually likes, that's like the guy that he likes that's been raising him lately. Loved that part at the end where he wrote that whole chapter that was advice for a human, and it was like to Gulliver, and he just had all these like really wisdom things that he learned while he was like on the planet. Don't worry about your abilities, you have the ability to love and that is enough. And like technology won't save humankind, humans will. You shouldn't have been born, your existence is as close to impossible as can be. To dismiss the impossible is to dismiss yourself. You know, especially since he knew that Gulliver tried to kill himself. I love when he included this part when he said, dark matter is needed to hold galaxies together. Your mind is a galaxy, more dark than light, but the light makes it worthwhile. Which is to say, don't kill yourself, even when the darkness is total. Always know that life is not still. Time is space. You are moving through that galaxy. Wait for the stars. Ugh, I just loved it so much. I love this last part of the book. This is like the very last page when he says, I sat back and absorbed the sky and tried not to understand anything at all. I sat there until it was night, until distant suns and planets shone above me like a giant advert for better living on other more enlightened planets. There was the peace and calm and logic that so often came with advanced intelligence, and I wanted none of it, I realized. What I wanted was that most exotic of all things. I had no idea if it was possible. It probably wasn't, but I needed to find out. I wanted to live with people I could care for and who would care for me. I wanted family. I wanted happiness, not tomorrow or yesterday, but right now. It was just so good. It was so good. I just love how, like, his character arc felt so realistic, how he started off with this very pessimistic view of humanity and how it eventually turned into like admiration, and like so much so that he wanted to become a human himself. He's comfortable living a short life if it means he actually gets to live. He doesn't want to live on his boring ass planet where nothing ever happens and everyone's peaceful and nobody ever does anything. He would rather be here on our messy, ridiculous planet and full of our ridiculous, stupid humans, because at least we're living. And like, once again, that's why it reminds me so much of We Are the Ants. It just has that same message of like, the beginning starts off with like, why is humanity so fucking stupid? We're just wasting our time on this earth. Nothing has any meaning. And then by the end of the book, it's just like the most happiest, hopeful, optimistic thing that I didn't even know that I could feel myself because I'm such a pessimist. I just love books that make me feel hopeful, and I love books that give me a new perspective on the world and people. This was definitely the biggest surprise of the year so far. I fucking loved it. It might be my favorite book of the year. I mean, I don't know, I've read a lot of really great books this year, but fuck, I loved it. I want to know, have you guys read it? What are your thoughts on it? Oh, sorry, my camera battery just died. Let me know your thoughts on The Humans if you loved it as much as I did, and thank you guys so much for watching. Sorry this was probably kind of lengthy, but you know, my book talks usually are, I feel like. And I will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.